Hey guys, so far with equations, we've done one-step equations, we've done two-step equations, and now you probably would think I'm gonna say we're moving on to three-step equations. And some of these will have three steps, but we're moving on to solving equations in factored form. So anytime we're solving equations, our goal is always to isolate the variable. Okay, we want to get x by itself. We want to isolate the variable. And when it comes to solving equations in factored form, and I guess before we move on, factored form we talked about when we were dealing with expressions, looks something like this. There's a number outside of the parentheses multiplying by the terms inside the parentheses. And there's two methods to go about solving these, and those are on the front side of your notes. Method one is using the distributive property, okay? So we learned about that with expressions when we learned how to expand expressions. So we distribute the number outside the parentheses to the numbers inside, and then we end up with a two-step equation where we were earlier this week. So 2 times the quantity of x plus 4 becomes 2x plus 8 equals 20, and then you take it from there. Subtract 8 on both sides, and then divide both sides by 2 to get the answer of x equals 6. Method 2 is using inverse operations to undo the number that's outside the parentheses. This 2 outside the parentheses really means 2 times that entire amount. So to undo times 2, we would divide by 2, and that would get rid of it. So if we divide both sides by 2, then that gets rid of the 2 outside the parentheses. Then we're just left with what's on the inside. X plus 4 equals 20, or equals 10 now that we divided both sides by 2. And then we take it from there. So those are the two methods. Look those over a little bit more closely if you need to. And we're going to go through both methods on the back side of the notes. All right, so for our examples, for the first three, we're going to use method 1, where we use the distributive property. And for the second three, we're going to use method 2. So to get started, method 1, I would distribute this negative 5 into both of the terms. So negative 5 times x becomes negative 5x. Negative 5 times 7 becomes negative 35, or minus 35. And then we still have that equals 0. Okay? Now, like I said, we're back to where we were earlier this week. This is a two-step equation. I'll start by adding 35 on both sides. Minus 35 and plus 35 cancel out, leaves me with negative 5x over here, and 0 plus 35 is 35 on the right. And then to undo this times negative 5, I need to divide by negative 5 on both sides. That leaves me with x equals negative 7. Going on to this next one, again, still using method 1, using the distributive property. I'm going to distribute the 6 into each of these terms. 6 times negative x becomes negative 6x, plus 6 times 1/2, well, half of 6 is 3, and that equals negative 3 still. And now let's solve. Get rid of that plus 3 by subtracting 3 on both sides. That leaves me with negative 6x equal to negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. And then divide both sides by negative 6. To get rid of that times negative 6, we divide to get x equals 1. Negative 6 divided by negative 6 is positive 1. All right, and then lastly, let's do this last one. Again, using method 1, I'm going to distribute this 1.5 into each term. This becomes 1.5p plus 1.5 times 3 is 4.5. And that equals 18 still. Subtract 4.5 on both sides. That leaves me with 1.5p equals 18 minus 4.5 is 13.5. And divide both sides by 1.5 to get p equals whatever 13.5 divided by 1.5 is. 1 sec, let me get my calculator. 13.5 divided by 1.5 equals 9. All right, sorry about that. Had to get my handy dandy calculator. So that's method 1. Using the distributive property, that takes us to a 2-step equation typically, and then we solve it from there. For the remainder, we're going to use method 2, where we're going to get rid of this number outside the parentheses being multiplied by dividing. So to undo times 1/6, I'll divide both sides by 1/6. So the times 1/6 and the divided by 1/6 cancel out. I'm just left with z plus 1 equal to 6 divided by 1/6. And remember, you can keep, change, flip. That really means 6 times 6 over 1, which is 6, 36. You can use a calculator if you need to, but that one should be a pretty easy one to do in your head. And then from here, z plus 1 equals 36. Subtract 1 on both sides to get z equals 35. All right, going on to this next one, we are multiplying the terms inside the parentheses by -2. So to get rid of that -2, I can divide both sides by -2. All right, so the times -2 and the divided by -2 cancel out. Leaves us with 6x minus 4 equal to -16 divided by -2 is +8. Now we're at a 2-step equation where we can solve. Start by adding 4 on both sides. Those cancel, leaves us with 6x equals 12. And hopefully you know what x equals, but just to finish off, divide by 6 on both sides to get x equals 2. Okay, and then one more. Again, we're using method 2 where we get rid of this times 3 by dividing by 3 on both sides. That cancels out, leaves me with 11 minus x equaling 9 divided by 3, which is 3. And from here, I would say, hopefully you can just know 11 minus 8 is what gets us to 3. So x does equal 8. But just to show you the steps, this is how you would technically do it. Subtract 11 on both sides, leaves us with -x equals -8. And then take the opposite of both sides. If -x equals -8, then x equals +8. Okay. For this next one, I'm asking you to choose a method. So looking at this example, 3 times the quantity of -y minus 1 equals 1. Choose a method, either 1 or 2, whichever one you prefer, to solve for y. Okay, so I'm going to have you pause the video and solve. All right, if you chose method 1 here, I'm going to show you how to do it. If you chose method 2, then I'll show you here shortly. But using method 1, you would distribute that 3 in to get -3y minus 3 equals 1. From here, you would add 3 on both sides to get -3y equals 4. And then divide both sides by -3. So y equals 4 divided by -3, which you could leave as -4/3, or as an improper or as a mixed number, that would be -1 1/3. Or if you use a calculator, -4 divided by 3 is -1.333. So y could be any one of those options. -4/3, -1 1/3, or -1.3 repeating. If you use method 2, you would start by dividing both sides by 3. Okay, that would get rid of the 3 on this side and leave you with -y minus 1. And that leave you with 1 divided by 3 on this side, which I would just leave as 1 divided by 3 as a fraction, which is 1/3. Okay? If you actually use your calculator, 1 divided by 3 is 0.33333 repeating, but I would leave it like that for this case. Then from here you'd add 1 on both sides. That gives you -y equals 1/3 plus 1 is 1 1/3. And if -y equals that, then +y would equal -1 1/3, just like we came up with over there. So that's just how you would solve that using both methods. You can pick whichever method you would like. I typically only use method 2 if I can evenly divide both sides by the number out here. So here, when I divided both sides by 3, that gave me a fraction over here, and I try to avoid that at all costs. I really only divide both sides by a number if I can evenly or nicely. Like up here. I could divide both sides by -2 because -16 divided by -2 gives me a whole number rather than a fraction or a decimal. But you can choose either method at any point. And then lastly, there's going to be some equations that go even further than that. So if there's more than just the factored term in the equation, for example, here we have this extra plus y, you have to use the distributive property method. You have to use method 1 because if you use method 2, you have to divide this whole side by 3, and that means you'd have to also have y divided by 3, and then that gets really confusing. So we do have to use method 1 for that reason. Uh-oh. Go away. Okay. So, starting with method 1, I'm going to distribute this 3. This becomes 3y minus 3. I don't distribute it to this plus y because that was not in the parentheses, so that just stays plus y equals 1. Now we have like terms. 3y and y is 4y minus 3 equals 1. Add 3 to both sides. 4y equals 4. And lastly, divide both sides by 4 to give you y equals 1. Phew, so that was actually a 1, 2, 3, 4-step equation, but hopefully it wasn't too scary. And let's do it again over here. Again, we need to use method 1. We need to distribute here to get 2x minus 6 plus 2 equals 14. Combine like terms. -6 plus +2 is -4. So this will become 2x minus 4 equals 14. Add 4 to both sides. You get 2x equals 18. And divide both sides by 2 to get x equals 9. So again, another 1, 2, 3, 4-step equation, which hopefully we are feeling confident with. So next, you'll practice some on your own. Good luck, and I'll be in touch.